Hello, everyone, and welcome to Immerse. My name is Sarah Lam. I am one of the co-curators and co-producers of this not-for-profit event series. And I'm joined today by John Alexiou, founder of StudioFeed and SUBPAC, and the host of our Immerse show. Hello, John.
Hey, great to connect. Good to see you.
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Immersed is an event series around music, health, and technology. Over the course of our series, we bring in voices from the academic community, scientists, practitioners, technologists, musicians, creators, with one thing in common, and that is exploring how sound and music can affect us as individuals and as society. So I'm super excited for today's show. We're going to take it a little bit out of the body and the mind today, and we're going to get into the collective wealth, maybe wealth.
Health and wealth.
Health and wealth of our music community. And helping us unpack this very loaded subject is an amazing cast of characters, each in their own right have contributed to the strength of our collective music community in their own ways, whether it's through production or promotion and beyond. So first and foremost, we have Patti Schmidt coming to us out of Montreal, Canada. Hello, Patti.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. So Patti's been heavily involved in the Canadian independent and underground music community for 25 plus years. Many of you in the music community will know her from her work with CBC, Brave New Worlds. You may also know her as a force behind the MUTEK Montreal Festival. I think it's 10 plus years. She was acting as a curator, co-curator, producer, and editor for that particular series. Patti has been outspoken and a strong voice in terms of inclusivity, gender parity, and beyond. And she's currently hustling for Toronto Pride and I believe the Canadian British Council. So welcome, Patti.
Thank you.
We are also joined by Suzi Analogue coming to us out of Miami, Florida. Hey, Suzi.
Sarah, hi, John. Good to see you all.
So Suzi, in a nutshell, is shaping culture. She's a producer, a songwriter, composer. She's the creator of the Never Normal Records based out of Florida. And she has been energetically pioneering a new wave of women producers in electronic music and beyond. There's a lot more to say about Suzi, but I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll just leave it with that. She's a force.
A force. Well said.
Force.
Hey, thank y'all. Yes, glad to be here today.
Welcome. Adding some spice to this panel, we're going over to our beloved Berlin with Lutz. And I apologize in advance to my German friends, Leichsenring, I think. Hello, Lutz. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I mean, Lutz is clearly one of the leading authorities when it comes to protecting our creative communities. He's got a huge bio, but he's a spokesman and executive board member for the Berlin Clubcommission. He's been fighting tirelessly for the rights of Berlin's vast underground club music scene. He's also co-founded a project called Creative Footprints, which basically measures, compares, and advocates for the creative spaces in urban cities. And I'm going to leave it there for now, but there's a lot to unpack in terms of the advocacy you're doing in the community and how you're helping to support our general health. Up next, we have Miro Wiesner out of San Francisco. Hello, Miro.
Hi, how are you?
Well, good. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Miro's been, another veteran advocate, over 25 years working in the music industry. He began working with labels and artists back in the 90s. He's the founder of Surefire agency, with a focus on representing San Francisco musicians. And he's carried that work on now as I don't know if it's the word's executive director, but the man at the front for MUTEK San Francisco, again, putting a lot of effort into really representing the vast array of talent that comes out of the San Francisco music scene. So welcome, Miro.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Pursuit Grooves. There she is. Hey.
How are you, dear?
I don't know whether to say Venice, aka Pursuit Grooves, or Pursuit Grooves, aka Venice, but either way, welcome to you.
It's all the same person.
That's it. Venice is originally out of New York, but now lives in Toronto and gives us a great perspective coming out of that scene. Producer, DJ, facilitator, visual artist, I mean, an amazing performer. The list goes on, but Venice has definitely been at the forefront of shaping and strengthening our creative music culture. And in addition to being a panelist today, she has curated AV performance, especially for this show, which we appreciate, and really excited to hear. We'll have that at the end. And before I kick it over to John, just to give our listeners at home a little bit of a rundown, we're going to get into a panel chat. And after the panel chat, or during the panel chat, we're going to open it up to our online audience. So as we're batting around these ideas, feel free to hit us up on your socials with your questions and your comments, and we'll do our best to get into as many of those comments as we can as we go. Following the panel chat, we're going to have the AV performance by Pursuit Grooves. So we'll have an opportunity to take all of those ideas that we're floating around and really bring them into our body and integrate them in a powerful way through that performance. I'm Sarah Lam. You are tuned into Immerse Digital, brought to you by StudioFeed. Over to you, John.
Nice one, Sarah. Thanks for that. And welcome to everyone on this panel. First off, thanks, guys, for joining us. One thing to get out of the way, we're super thankful for everything you guys are doing. It's tough to fit this all into one discussion, but suffice to say, you all are inspiring a bunch of people and what you're doing from a day-to-day basis, and hopefully we can shine some light on that today and have a bit of a chat around that. So wanted to kick it off with a very, simple question, but I think it'll extend to quite a healthy discussion. What does a healthy music ecosystem, a healthy music community look like? And, feel free to pull in some of the things that you guys are working on and provide whatever types of examples you guys feel is necessary. So Miro, why don't we kick it off with you? What does a healthy music community, a healthy music ecosystem look like?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of us are going to touch on similar points. I know a lot of the work that Lutz has been doing involving keeping creative communities inside civic centers and working with venues and creators in tandem means a lot. So for me, living in one of the most expensive zip codes in the world, where it's very, very difficult for artists to maintain presence, I think a paramount aspect of a healthy ecosystem is having creative people inside the walls of an economic fabric, or inside the mesh of an economic fabric. Figuring out ways to make sure that there's a local and colloquial representation of scenes of music, of art, of creative activity, which it really means social, societal support, community support. And I don't just mean financial, I also mean in regards to the place that creative practice deserves inside of a holistic society. Currently, there's a great emphasis on the commercial application of creation, which is great because I went to art school. So it's wonderful to see aspects of the work that I did in my education being heralded as valuable now. Particularly in technology and software, but at the same time, it shouldn't be seen as the only aspect of value or currency that comes from creation. So to me, keeping people in the city, getting support from the general public, to having them understand the value to their lives, the holistic value of having creative practice in the walls of their city, I think is important.
Well said. Yeah, and I know you've got a ton of experience to draw from when you say that. Stoked to get into some of that. Patti, how about you?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to speak to the economics or physical spaces. There are people here who are much more expert about all of that stuff. And so for me, talking about healthy music communities, particularly contemporary ones and healthy ones like punk rock is what I came up on, and electronic music and contemporary art communities, it's this way that we can all collectively make our own world. And you can infuse that with values, with ethics, with politics, This is what healthy music communities taught me. Like it changed my life. They're spaces of revelation. And I also think the other thing about a healthy community is when you have power, you should use it conscientiously. So I guess this is where the idea of advocacy would come in. And I think in all of my careers, I've had opportunities to do this, to recommend, to program, to curate, to showcase things. So when you do have the power, I feel like a healthy community that has those people in it, be they promoters, bookers of festivals, of clubs, whatever it is, that you really should use it for the forces of light. And so if you don't have that power inside of a healthy music community, that's the kind of advocacy that I call complaining up. So you be vocal, you sort of talk to each other, you hope that there's dialogue inside of your creative community so that you can change things. So at CBC, at Brave New Ways, where I worked for 17 years, it was really about advocating for the contemporary, the weird, the underheard, the surprising. All of these things bring new forms and new ideas. And I think that I ported that into work that I did at MUTEK, which is really an amazing vehicle as a festival because it's not constrained by commercial concerns, right? So you can really go lots of different places and start to inject emergent things into it. There's 3 levels of programming. It's not always about headliners. And the other thing I think makes a healthy music community is diversity, inclusion. These are things that I've been quite surprised over the last few years haven't been very actually easy topics inside of otherwise progressive music communities. Mm-hmm. So I've done my share of complaining up, and now in the work that I do for the British Council, which is a program called Amplify, which is about empowering women in digital arts and connecting them from South America to the UK and Canada, that these create mechanisms for, say, festivals to understand what is possible. It helps that it comes with funding, but yeah, so language and dialogue, they're very tricky things. So even when you do have the power and you're complaining up, you really have to learn how to speak to each other. And you kind of have to be an expert of the language and the advocacy yourself, which can be kind of exhausting.
No doubt. No doubt. Thanks for that, Patti. Suzi, how about you? You know, in these times, there's a ton of stuff going on, and I know we're all working towards implementing some sustainability and having the music ecosystem thrive. Where do you stand as far as what does a healthy music community, a healthy music ecosystem look like?
Well, this is a question I've been asking myself from my start. Honestly, I would say when Jay Dilla passed away, I was like entering my 20s really. But that was the first person that made me realize like, oh wow, like I'm a producer and like, yeah, you can make beats all day, but you have to take care of yourself. And so like ever since then, like a part of what I do has just been like, how can I sustain my health in doing the very physically rigorous things and tasks that people ask of you. And so when it comes to health, it's just like, there's no blueprint for how artists are supposed to stay healthy in this world. I just don't think that one at this point exists, but I think we're at a great point where we can work together and have conversations like today as to how we can utilize our resources we each have and pool them together so we can create a more systemic effect of having health be a tenet in just being a musician. I really here for this conversation to start to even ask these questions today with you all so we can come to some great conclusions.
Right on. Yeah, well said. Lutz, from your standpoint, I know you're working heavily in a, sort of a grassroots systemic change. What are your thoughts on what a healthy music ecosystem looks like?
Well, from my point of view, of course, everybody touched already very important points. But for me, first of all, it doesn't have to be connected to economics, first of all, because I think when I traveled all over the world and I saw very healthy music environments, and there was nearly no money was being made, but it was a great social cultural output. And everywhere where I kind of analyzed what the situation is, I always saw like 3 factors which have to be in a certain place that the scene is healthy. One is you have to have a creative community that is also welcomed and respected and supported. That also means that they have to have affordable living, because if you cannot afford your house, then you're also not welcomed in a certain way. So so the community is very important. The second is affordable and accessible space. I think a lot of cities underestimated how much of their attractiveness and how a city is perceived and how a city is understood by the people, what makes a city really attractive is based on how much accessible and affordable space there is for artistic purposes. So if you look into cities like London or also New York, these creative communities get pushed out of the city more and more, and the less attractive the city got because of that factor. And number 3, you have to have the right framework conditions. And a lot of cities who have maybe affordable space and creative communities lack on the support of government, lack on nighttime transportation. In many of these cities, the bus stops at midnight, so there's not really a nightlife happening if you don't know how to commute in the city. But also the question of what Patti said, the question of advocacy. Is there somebody I can talk to, somebody who can translate my needs to somebody in decision making? Is there like grants available who support emerging artists? And all these questions are summed in the topic of framework conditions. And I think if you have this in the right space or in a leveled out well, then I think you can create a very healthy music ecosystem.
Well said. And we'll jump into some of your initiatives shortly, so everyone gets an idea of what you're up to, but it's super powerful stuff. Van Nies, how's Toronto these days?
Musically pretty shut down in terms of being in the same space and events. Pretty non-existent, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some interesting things happening online. We don't have much of a choice right now, but it's okay.
Yeah, awesome. And I know, we've had a bunch of great chats in the past. Where do you stand on some of the things that can be done to create a healthier music ecosystem, hopefully sooner rather than later?
Something that I think is really important, and for me, it's not just in the music arena. I think this is the case for a number of different industries, but specifically speaking from a music perspective, I think there needs to be a lot more mentorship, and I think that comes in a number of different ways. I'll come back to the music creation producer part of it, but whether you run a venue, whether you run a promotion company, whatever side of the music industry that you're representing, or maybe you build sound systems. There's so many different aspects of it. I think there needs to be more sharing to the next generation, the younger generation, so that they don't make the same mistakes. Because there are a lot of things that come into play when you're trying to start a festival, when you're trying to start an event, when you're trying to start a booking agency, when you're trying to start a record label. And I think there are moments where it seems almost secretive in a way. And then there are some people who really go out of their way to share information and try to make sure that the next person coming along doesn't have to jump as many hurdles and has a better entry into trying to build something sustainable. Because I find that, we tend to do things in cycles. Like every 3 or 4 years, there are a new set of promoters or a new set of venues or a new set of things that are kind of operating. And if you're lucky, you're able to last for longer than that. But that comes from a lot of trial and error. So I think if we have more platforms where there's a direct sharing of knowledge and mentorship, we have a much better chance of building a healthy community. Mm-hmm. And in terms of music production or being a producer, let's say, for instance, I co-run Loop Sessions Toronto. Mm-hmm. And even though right now we're focusing on doing these events virtually, when we were doing these events in person, which was once a month, we gave an opportunity to have a safe space where people could build and experiment and not be afraid to discuss different things and fit into certain genres and be able to move in a way where you didn't feel judged and there's a freedom of creation. And whether you had only been producing for a year or you'd been producing for 20 years, because we had a lot of that in that space, which was amazing and great to see, and different types of gear, whether hardware, software, and we really focus on having a broad range of accessibility. Mm-hmm. And I found that made for a very great environment because the entry level was really even, you know, mm-hmm. what I mean? And you had that comfortable space to express yourself musically. And I think that's really important in order to be able to build creatively without feeling like you have to fit in any mm-hmm. genre or use a particular type of software, or that there are any rules, actually. I think that's really important, you know, mentorship mm-hmm. and creating safe spaces for people to experiment and create.
Yes, I mean, we'll come back to that in a bit, but I think you're super on point on a few things. Yeah, well said. Why don't we open up the conversation a bit and talk a little bit about events, festivals. We had an interesting conversation before this show right here went live, but maybe starting off with Miro, based on, from the outside and hopefully from the inside, a super compelling, innovative approach to events that you had to undertake based on, you know, obviously the external circumstances with the virus. What are some things that you think, Miro, with respect to festivals and events in particular, that, you know, we can really zero in on and make sure are baked into a healthier music ecosystem when we can get there? And even some of the challenges as well. I know there's a lot of people interested in that.
Sure. So I'm on both sides of the fence. So I'm lucky in that regard. As a booking agent, we evaluate a number of events across the country to make sure that the placements are correct for the artists, but also working with MUTEK San Francisco in a single market, my home market, is an eye-opener as well. You know, we're not that old we're the youngest in the MUTEK network. The network itself is 22 years old. We've only done 2 editions, and in a commercial environment, in a much more commercially viable environment, a festival takes 3 to 5 years to stabilize. And as Patti said, we in a country that is driven almost solely by economics are attempting to mirror a model from a country and a province and a city, in fact, that has an immense amount of support for artists and gives a breadth of freedom to curation, mm-hmm. to socio-political topics, things of this nature that would be shut down by sponsors and things like that. So it's been there have been growing pains pre-COVID. We're very pleased with the place that we've carved ourselves out in the whole spectrum of available festivals. However, financially, it's been extremely difficult. So when May rolled around, which is when we normally do the festival this year, and of course, there was no sign in sight of shelter in place ever being lifted by that time, we needed to figure out what exactly we could do. And I'm actually on the board of another company called Currents FM, which is a tool set for independent artists to help them gain multiple revenue streams. And one of the things they were working on is a virtual festival environment. So we decided to do our 3rd edition online. And it was nothing new. We had great points of reference, including United We Stream, which is Lutz's organization. But we were also trying to somehow differentiate ourselves from, a massive lineup of 100 artists on a Twitch stream at one end of the spectrum, and then these sort of embryonic 3D VR spaces that where the uncanny valley is this massive gap, and you don't really feel comfortable in that space. Mm-hmm. So we took the initiative to build an idea, really build on the idea of gathering and socialization and human interaction. So rather than trying to do fancy interface stuff, it was about the content, which was MUTEK's core, and about building a tool set that made people feel like they were in a room together, made people feel like they could congregate with subsets of their friends. Mm-hmm. And as a proof of concept, it worked out very, very well. So in regards to the ecosystem, and mm-hmm. Patti and I were talking about this in the preamble on Wednesday before this, what does it mean now to localize if in fact you are presenting works online? What does it mean to have 7 different editions of MUTEK when we used to premiere a commission in one city and then tour it in the other cities? Well, now if it's online, you can't really do that anymore, right? Why would I show something in Mexico when it's already been shown in Montreal? And then what does it mean? What does the word community mean? And what is gained and what is lost by globalization in the context of presenting artistic content, right? There's as Patti mentioned, there was an immense amount of loss when the content is sort of a swath of what's available across the board, rather than highlights of what's available across the board, with a core being localized, right? So the reason why I thought MUTEK would work well in San Francisco, not only because of the technological element, but also because our community has been stifled for so long because of economic issues. And mm-hmm. the people who have not left and are still here, and I include Oakland and different parts of the Bay Area, the people who are struggling to stay deserve a platform. There are a lot of amazing local organizations that are mentoring and educating. Sort of the funnel is moving inward, and we felt that MUTEK could be this broadcast saying, hey, look, world, refocus your lens off of apps and software and recognize that there are people in this region that are making exceptional work. So it poses the question, I guess, if we are forced to move some or all of our content into an online environment, how does that help a local ecosystem? And I don't know if I have an answer for that yet. So.
Well, maybe I'll ask a couple of the artists on the panel here. How does moving things virtually to festivals and events, how does that impact you guys? Maybe kicking it off with Suzi. What are some of your thoughts on how that can create a healthy environment?
I can interject for a second.
Yeah, go.
We only paid Suzi $72 because it was donation based. So that's one impact, is that, right now nobody understands what the ticketing model is. So I didn't mean to steal your time.
No.
I think that's dope. Yeah.
Sending Suzi $72 made me feel like shit, I'll tell you that. But, aside from that, yeah.
Well, you know what? That's some groceries. That's my phone bill, so I can chat with y'all right now. So hey, that's where it is for artists. Somewhat right now. The model is really interesting. I'm glad I actually had a chance to participate in the MUTEK SF because now I'm also working with Currents, and I'm actually on the board now with Miro. Like, I'm an artist advisor, and I'm on a board for this thing, and I've never been on a board for anything. And that's like all this time, no one has asked me, do you want to just join the board? Because I do feel like I'm an artist who always has ideas, and I'm always down to figure out solutions. I'm on the ground, I'm doing a world tours, and it's just like, great. Now there's people, now that we're in this digital sphere, all of these, from an artist perspective, all of these interactions that were really very distracting, to say the least, that we had to worry about before COVID now are like streamlined. We're just like, okay, now we just have our phones and computers. That's it. That's our only means of interacting. And so now we can focus and actually just think and envision together. And so from the artistic end, just as far as performances, I'm seeing really much more faster turnovers as far as like from when people see me perform a live stream to when they check out my music, it's within the same hour. Whereas I've been on nationwide and international tours, and that could take a span of a week. So, or more. People could just forget because they're just there with their friends, or they're like, I just came, and they might have a hangover the next day. So they're like, oh yeah, I saw an artist, they're dope. And then they hit you up like a month later, like, I saw you a month ago. Now people are like, I'm buying all your music right now on Bandcamp Day.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that kind of stuff. It's like why I got paid $72, but also people started to buy my stuff immediately that day. And I actually have a little bit more assurance right now, just because people are just really reacting much faster in this digital sphere.
I mean, Miro, I'm going to come back to you for a second. I mean, in our chat, you suggested that, okay, $72, but did you get a glimpse of how the potential could be there if something like this, like these kinds of virtual events would be sort of, baked in going forward?
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Putting more money into creators' pockets. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that we are in the very, very early stages of this. I mean, terms like Zoom fatigue are coming out, where people are realizing now in this new format that it's quite emotionally exhausting to talk to each other on a screen. So, and we had to ask ourselves, when we had a multi-room environment, we couldn't program it in the same manner you would with physical rooms, because you can't assume that someone's going to be at your festival for 10 hours like they would more likely be in a physical space. You can't assume that they're going to stay for a full set. I think what benefited from it is the discovery element, like Suzi was saying, is that people are more open to listening to and viewing new things and less concerned about, coming to see the headliner when you're in a virtual environment, And for us, it was an amazing proof of concept, not only from, is this, from the technology, is this software scalable for a larger number of people, but also the human interaction, and we got numerous reports from people just, on their own out of the blue. Thank you so much. I felt like I was at the festival. This is first time I've been at an online thing where I was with my friends. And so, we feel like we achieved that. The main concern, though, and I do hate to go back to economics again, Lutz, but the main concern is, at least from the American standpoint, do we need to provide quantitative data to sponsors to make it valuable to them? Will the audience, now that there's such a glut of available content and it's much easier to perform in a lot of ways, so they might have a chance to see Suzi or Venice 10 times throughout the year? And we certainly don't want to restrict that with exclusivity laws when it's a virtual environment. So the question then becomes is it about us monetizing it, or is this like the next phase of Napster, where it is about discovery, and what we're doing is providing a platform for the artists, and we give them tools so that, like Current, sorry for the plug again, where you can subscribe to the artist like a Patreon type thing, or you're directing them directly to their merch and music. I don't, it's still new, but so immense amount of value, and I think that it'll work itself out eventually. I'd be curious, actually, Lutz, is this something? How do you see United We Stream? To me, it feels very much like a bonding exercise and a community exercise. Is there a mandate or an interest from your team about the individual artist as well? Like, do you guys talk about propelling them or giving them avenues for sustainability?
Should we go into this right away?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't mean to think.
Let's do it. Yeah.
No. Well, it's, this United We Stream was born in 2 days. We said we had to do something on the day of the lockdown, and 5 days later we started this platform. And then it was so successful that we raised, I think like already 250,000 in the first week, 250,000 euro. And then 70 cities joined, and we collected at the end 1.4 million euro.
Wow.
So there was money being collected. The basic idea of that project was to support the stages, to the clubs who have to pay rent and are in danger to be bankrupt very soon. And of course, to create awareness about the whole situation. So the idea of having an empty space, an artist on an empty stage, and then showing that is also for people who are maybe not into nightlife or into music so much. They usually think there's noise littering, young kids taking drugs, whatever, and now they see, okay, there are artists without jobs, light sound people without jobs, and this is kind of the message we want to bring. But you're right, after now streaming for 3 or 4 months, we think about what is the next level, where are we heading with that project. And first of all, we want to keep it as a non-for-profit in terms of we don't want to be the next MTV commercial break station. We want to be authentic and original and want to keep it commercially free, at least the streams. But we think about creating islands around that, like satellites around the stream, where we maybe work with documentaries, with panels, where we also involve sponsors. We don't really found a solution yet to really make money directly from the viewers. Hopefully that is something which is also now being developed, where people are also continuously paying and not just once for donation.
Right.
Venice, what are your experiences with this new virtual environment?
I mean, here's the thing. Nothing compares to being able to travel to different places and meet people locally and share in that cultural exchange. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that compares to that. But I will say it's definitely a good time to figure out how to be creative in the streaming realm. And I'll say one plus is, let's say perhaps if you don't want to travel with so much gear, if you're at home or in the studio, you can pull out every and anything you want. That's a pro, right? Another thing is being able to control your space, where depending on where you're performing, you may or may not have that ability, maybe to some extent. But if you really can create your own story and your own stage with streaming, and I'm definitely taking advantage of that. It's a good time to really push your creative boundaries. And I think the most creative stream I've seen thus far is probably Erykah Badu, because she literally created different environments within the same show and had different outfits, and it really felt entertaining. Now, I think she did 3 different events. Of course, you eventually don't want to keep doing that because it becomes overkill. But I mean, we don't have many options right now, but I think it's just a time to really use whatever you can to your benefit, and maybe find other ways to be interactive with your audience, maybe after the fact, to try to keep that connection if possible. But not having to travel with this, having all your gear available to you, and having your personal space, there are some benefits to that, but nothing beats being able to perform around the world and meeting people and higher fees. Yeah, for sure.
Right on. Right on.
But I can also say, I was talking to a booking agent. She's really successful working with big stars. She said she had to work out with a YouTube star who didn't really perform in live situations before. and that was horrible for her, because a person who is doing TV shows is not skilled to stand on a stage and interact with the audience. And I think the same situation is now having a live artist in front of a camera, because it's just a weird situation. At least like the artists who are performing in our empty space is basically a TV show. It's not a real performance where you can interact with the audience.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I was going to say, actually, we should be looking to TVs and systems like the broadcast system in the way that industry works. We just need to pivot in that way and figure out how they manage revenue streams. If that means we have to come up with a whole new overlying system, that's fine. It's time. We have the time now. We can't do the show, so we have to all come together and figure it out as an industry.
Patti, this idea of sort of virtual versus live, artist and energy exchange, what?
Yeah, I think it is actually a health issue. So one of the other companies that I've been working for is Envision Management, who is Kid Koala's management company. And there's been all these discussions. We've been overusing the word pivot like it's the new innovation. And there's actually really great grief amongst musicians who are live performers. And it started to be teased out a little bit as time goes on here. But, a live performance is really about so many spatial relations. It's you and your friends, it's you near the bar, it's you in this sort of 3D immersive space. When you move your body into a physical space to pay attention to somebody, your commitment to that moment is so much greater, even if you have moments of boredom. And I have to say, my tolerance for virtual performances is really slim. And we're still seeing 1 hour sets and that kind of thing. To watch a DJ do a mix thing is, something else entirely, but it is about the aura. It is about spatial relations and the feedback loops that are in that. And all of those contribute to the health of the creator, the audience, to future creation. And maybe this has been talked about and we've just put it aside because online is all we have right now, but it's a really big discussion at Envision, and many artists don't want to do it. Even MUTEK has had a couple of offers to artists, can you do your AV show online, and long explanations on how this is not the thing.
Definitely. I had the same experience with the Nexus series we just did. I had a wonderful chat with Nico and Sebastian of Circle of Live, and we got as close as we could to them considering doing it. They said this wasn't even something we had considered in the past. We provided them this very unique interactive environment. It was going to be like the flagship piece where we would push the limits on everything, including the technology and the interaction and what have you. But at the end of the day, we all collectively agreed that is about an experience in a room for 8 to 9 hours. And they not to overuse this sort of DJ term, but they do take you on a journey. And the whole point is that, the fact that it was so easy to move around in our virtual space and hop from one room to another was actually detrimental to the presentation of their work. And I respected that. Not everything is going to translate well. Hopefully as Patti said, you're right, the 60-minute set, like why aren't we doing much more intense pieces at shorter periods or longer ambient expressions? We should be really looking at every aspect of virtual performance and see how can we change things so that we're not just mirroring the physical presentation.
Yeah, psychology, sociology, architecture, it's all that.
Yeah.
Ben Nice, coming back to you on that. Anything you want to throw into this virtual versus physical performance?
Not really.
Not the hazardous, yeah.
I mean, no one saw any of this coming.
Right.
I just keep saying those who are quick to adapt will be the most successful. Anyone who's stuck in the way that they're used to, or that way things used to be, good luck, because we're going to be some of the last people to have any sort of normalcy. So we need all of the creative minds and all of the creative thinkers. And I think we also, need to pull from other industries. We need to collaborate a bit more and see where music can also be a supplement to other things. That's going to be the only way we're going to survive.
I'm getting pinged to remind people that are listening out there to throw in some questions for our esteemed guests on social. So if you get a chance to keep adding to the list of questions that we've got. Real quick, I wanted to riff off of what Suzi mentioned around now's the time to start to implement some interesting new models, whether it's revenue streams or otherwise. I mean, Suzi, you're doing some super important stuff with the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's this idea of, to use some of your thoughts, if artists and the supporting group work together with a very, unified voice, a lot of stuff can change, and I think it's a very fertile time for that.
Yeah, totally. My life has just changed. My life will never go back to what it was before COVID. It was so unhealthy. I can't believe I was running around the world the way I was. I look at myself like, I can't believe I was doing as much. I mean, for people who are watching my journey now and they're like, you're doing so much. I'm like, listen, if you knew all I was doing behind the scenes before COVID, you would be like, you're okay. And I feel much better than I did before, which is crazy because we're in a state of global crisis. But we're in that state and everyone has a sense of awareness now, whereas before, people weren't taking time to sit down and look and talk and converse about things that were important to the human condition, because we were all focused on that one thing we know, money. We were just too focused on money. And so I will never go back to even having those types of relationships I had and operating in the ways that I did before. And so with that being said, I am a Black woman and I'm a Black woman artist, and a lot of that lack of health and care is already and always pervasive in the Black community, because not so much attention is given to the issues of human condition in the Black community. And so whatever I can do and whatever I'm working on, it is to echo that I'm an artist, and what I feel like artists do is bring attention to the issues that the community feels. Whether it's on an individual basis, the artists are the ones that say, hey, look at this, for whatever reason. And every artist comes from a community. So as we go into the future, I need everyone from promoters to DJs and even people who do distribution to look and say, I'm talking to a person, not a screen, and they come from a community and they have issues, and those issues need to be considered when I enter a conversation with them to do anything.
Yeah, well said. Mira, did you want to riff off that at all? Or
I was just saying, absolutely. I mean, with Surefire, we've always tried to instill senses of personal health with the artists and make sure that there's a balance, that it's understood when you're going to perform for a community that's very receptive and reciprocal versus the gigs that will help pay your rent. But our emphasis has always been on sustainability and longevity. And I think, I remember designing a vitamin regimen for Addison Groove back in the day, things like that. And I think it's about care ultimately and not commodity. I think people need to be respected as people. And if you want to respect them as a commodity, then just play their songs off of a streaming service in the background and don't ask them to perform for you. So
exactly, I love that.
And at least they get the royalties.
But you know what you're saying, Miro? What you're saying is people need to understand how much they're lending to the music community and how much they're trying to take away. So when people have an ask, when companies have an ask, they need to understand you're asking, but at what price? And we need to restructure the ask and what is given, because everybody can't get a set. Everybody can't get a 30-minute or hour set. Some people are just going to get the playlist.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right on. Well said. Gonna fire some questions over from the audience, kicking it off with Steve from the UK. To the artists on the panel, what are the best ways that fans can support you guys right now, given the fact that live gigs aren't happening? So
Bandcamp.
Why does everyone love Bandcamp?
Because it's very transparent and it's direct. You don't have to wait 30 days for your money.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you an opportunity to interact. You have control over what you want to share. You do have some numbers in terms of who's following you. And they also give you free download links if you want to share those as well. I have more than I'll ever need if I wanted to share. But I think it gives the artist creative control. And I also feel that as a company, the moves and the statements that they've made as of late have been extremely beneficial and has showed how much care that they put into the artist. I don't see many companies doing that. So I really think Bandcamp is great, much better than Spotify or any of the other streaming services. And I think also sharing with your friends. If there's something that you like, don't be afraid to post it and share it. But there's a lot of music. There's so much music in existence. There's so much new music coming out. So it can be a bit overwhelming, but definitely the best way to support is Bandcamp. And I'm always so thankful. And when I get more follows or when people discover me that way and share it,
piggybacking off of that, the number one thing you can do all the time that's free is share our stuff, share a song. Oh, we're doing this panel today, share that with your friends. It's a panel on music and health, like, watch this. Even if you just send a link and they're like, oh, okay, I don't have time, whatever, you sent it and someone might come back to it. Don't get so caught up in the fact that people don't immediately respond when you share an artist thing, because it takes people time to get into all the things that an artist represents. So I would definitely say sharing. Bandcamp has been great, but I also love the new currents.fm. There's a lot of collectives there. I'm one of them. I have a Never Normal page, and we're coming up with new ways and new streams to have a subscription service. I've tried Patreon. I have a Patreon. I haven't hit $100 a month on Patreon yet. I've had that Patreon almost for a year. I've never hit $100 a month. It's very difficult, and I almost overshare content. So that just lets you know that every platform out here isn't yet great for every artist. But we have found some and listen to what the artists are saying. Yes, Bandcamp works. Yes, sharing works. Just tweeting, retweeting, all of those things really help us gain our visibility, because what we really need now more than ever is visibility for the things that we're doing.
Well said. Yeah. And wanted to shout out the board representation, board comment that you made earlier. It's really important. I mean, these things aren't discussed that much. Obviously, revenue share is important. Board representation, massively important. But anyways, let's talk about something here. We're in a few cities which have pushed the envelope, or at least a couple, meaning Montreal and Berlin in particular. Maybe we can spend a bit of time talking about a question that's come in, which is, what are you seeing from the more innovative cities out there, the types of things that they're doing to implement, whether it's policy change or just, innovative and progressive solutions to things. Lutz, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So I think what helped us was to look at the film industry, what they achieved, because they were always a bit ahead. So, for instance, there was a program when the art cinemas turned from analog to digital projectors. They got funding from the government, and we said, well, also the music clubs have to switch from analog to digital. So why isn't there a program for that? So that was one of them. And then there was also in Berlin, we had a film board which has 30 million funding for films, and obviously politicians also like to be on the red carpet and be with the artists. Maybe that was the reason why they have so much money. But we also then claimed that we also want to have a music board, and the music board is really doing a good job. It's a funding institution for pop music in Berlin. It has a budget of 4.5 million euros, and it pays residencies, it pays grassroots music festivals, it pays the work of the Clubcommission as a network lobby organization. It does a really good work and supports a lot of artists. It does also a small music festival for youngsters and newbies. Maybe some policies the Clubcommission was forcing. We now have a program. It's called the Soundproofing Fund. It's a project which has also 2 million funding for small grassroots clubs. So if you have problems with your neighbors, you can apply for money to make soundproofing in your venue. We're now pushing a program which is it's into going into illegal raves in parks. We want to legalize them. We think it's a good thing that people gather together at parks and bring their sound system and have a good time, as long as they're not littering and making noise. So we have to find solutions for that. But if you don't make litter and you don't make noise, why don't you just go to parks and make a dance, have a dance? So that's what we're working on, and we have the support of the government. So let's see if that turns out into legal way.
Honestly, it's a dream come true what resources you all have in Europe. I just have to say, I wish we had a tenth of that kind of support and education here, but it's not here yet. And I think we have to keep working globally.
Right on.
I think.
Mira, what do you think? Yep.
Well, yeah, there's a real distinct divide. I'm Canadian as well, but I've lived in the States for about 18 years. So there's a real definitive divide between Europe and Canada, and actually parts of Canada, I should be clear. It's really interesting because Patti and I, for years, worked with the same organization, but we were two coins of the same side in a way. The goals, the curatorial goals, the philosophy, the ethos were the same. But Montreal is a city that has been built on keeping creators within it. There are programs to bring business, creative business into Montreal. SUBPAC knows this, right? There is a SUBPAC office in Montreal, and there are incentive programs to have companies like that land. And Patti can speak to a little bit about the public funding in Montreal compared to it being fully commercially driven in the United States.
I mean, the thing that's most significant probably about Montreal and Quebec right away is that it's already its own nation state. And so there's always been a great protection about the arts and culture. And then you can even cast that idea back further to just French heritage and an embrace of the avant-garde and artistic and cultural life being essential to the human being. And so things are a lot more robust for artists living in Quebec in terms of, startup grants to realize ideas and then ongoing support. Lots of initiatives in the wake of COVID to keep supporting artists. I haven't heard of venues like music venues. Casa de Popolo has repurposed themselves.
All right.
But it's this really long tradition of avant-gardism and arts and identity, and it's possible to do things and to have a healthy art practice here.
It's interesting you say that, because I have so many friends, especially coming from the electronic community, who are even share Black American identity, who are moving to Montreal because they want to stay in North America, but you just get to the end of the support and you're like, what can I do? How can I exist?
Well, they even accept residents who are from other nationalities here, like in the granting thing. It's where is your residence is actually more important than what you're
similar in Berlin as well. Yeah, the Goethe Institute really just is concerned with you living in Berlin, which has been really beneficial to the agency. And I do want to clear something up. I said there's no support here. I don't mean that. What was the interesting point that Patti made about support being tied to identity in Quebec in particular. So I will say that the support that we receive is always about national identity, just not the American national identity. So, for example, Wunderbar Together was a German-American relations program last year. We were very grateful for the substantial grant we got from the Goethe Institute there. The French, the Austrians, the Germans, the Italians all give us money so that they can present their geographic national identity in an American context. The problem is that America does not reciprocate. So I do get support, but it's from other countries.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Well,
so.
that means there's room, right? Like, does that mean that there's room here now to innovate and find the people who would want to even create that level of support to represent the stories and the music and the culture here?
You collaborate with Italians and Canadians.
Well, that's my life. Barring learning the languages, I interact with consulates far more than I do corporations. Suzi, the problem that we've been finding here, and many of my colleagues with progressive sort of art institutions that deal in the digital space will say the same thing, is that the systems in place for civic and state support of arts programs are all quite archaic, and the understanding of what art is very antiquated. So even though we're all applying for these grants, including Gray Area and a few other of my colleagues, we tend to not be in the running because the Indonesian Ukulele Society will
so you're right.
Or the ballet or the opera. And
yes.
Please understand, I come from classical. I respect those greatly, and I would be such a shame if the symphony disappeared or the ballet disappeared. But I think we're stuck in this demonization that Lutz was talking about, we're just a bunch of drunk, or someone had mentioned drunk or drugged ravers, or there's no artistic value here. And that's one side of the sandwich. And the other side is that the mediums that we're using are used so prolifically in commercial, advertising and marketing, that everyone thinks that it's just an LED wall behind David Guetta, or it's an experiential marketing program. And that's just because they don't understand that we make, sounds with machines, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're an advertising firm. Do you know what I mean?
Right. You're absolutely right. I share that experience with you, and the fact that I'm actually a U.S. State Department alumni. So they encourage us to apply for these grants that go to the ukulele. Usually, like, if I wanted to do an idea, like, I could win money from the U.S. government to do it, right? But it's not usually going to go to me, and I really haven't really tried to do a big idea yet. They want us to be able to represent the United States in such a way, but I'm like, you all aren't even like pushing STEM. Like, you're not like all of those implications that you were saying. It's not just a wall behind David Guetta. That's STEM. That's educational. Like, the values of what makes electronic music culture interesting are not being put on the front and center. And there's a huge backlash against the youth culture. Raves is just bad, like, to moralize it. Like, the youth culture is the future. We should be lending, and it just seems like every other country at this point gets that, and for whatever reasons we're behind. But I think that someone like yourself who is already talking with consulates, like, I feel like you're definitely a great candidate to actually start to engage, to ask who is really down to help make this really a movement for people to better understand music culture, electronic music culture, the history, because we all know the rich histories coming from American cities, from Detroit, from Chicago.
Oh, yes.
Miami, we all know these things. So why can't we tell it as an American story? And also in these communities, there's health issues. Why can't we just bring it all together is what I'm wondering.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those are very, very important questions. Yeah.
But isn't a lot of change happening right now? I think some things which are which are happening on the streets and in political discussions would not be happening 5 years ago. You know, like Bernie Sanders, Black Lives Matters, all these discussions, all this awareness which comes up. I mean, maybe it's just a media thing, but I feel that, I mean, we just thought about doing a stream in a museum in Berlin, and now we have discussion about colonialism.
Colonialization.
So
it's
pardon my
say,
friend.
It's hard to say, and it was even harder to implement.
Yeah.
And it's harder to deal with in our day-to-day life. I'll tell you that.
No, but it's really creating an awareness which was never there before, and I just have to hope that things are also changing in governments and in people who make budgets and distribute money and all these kind of things.
I think that even if there isn't like some automatic policy things, because this is sort of the atmosphere that young kids or a younger generation is growing up in, it's sort of, I went to school in the 1970s, and progressive public schools taught me to not vote like my parents. And it was the time of the Human Rights Declaration. It was the beginning of, the climate discussion, and all of that stuff got inside of me. And somehow I came out a little bit lefty pinko. And I think that because the discussions are so global around all of these really vital issues, race being, foremost right now, that I think that is going to percolate down. I feel like the new generation of kids, even in the safer spaces stuff that I've been working on, inclusion, self-regulated and self-policed spaces, there's a real screaming about fairness and equality that is not about the ideologies and former social movements. It's just about maybe growing up with the internet, but also just basic fairness seems to be baked into them.
I think that's dope. And I also think that schools are falling apart in this country. In the United States, schools are just, we had to suspend even higher level institutions. Like, there was no college. There was, it's going to be almost a year where there was no school. Like soon there was no school. For a period of time, a large group of youth will have not been to school. And so I'm thinking everything everyone's taking in is the internet. So then as an artist, I'm like, now we have a responsibility to educate, and every entertainment entity, I think has some responsibility to educate at this point. And we can work that stuff in, but luckily you were going to school at that time. But I'm literally looking at my friends with children, and I'm like, they don't have school. They're sitting at home all day just on their iPad. And like, what curriculums are they learning? Who is telling them anything?
I'm sure they could all fall into QAnon holes and never come back.
Yep.
But I feel like even things like video game design are starting to build in fairness, to remove caricature and stereotype. Like, because of what's going on right now, there's an editing of the sort of corporate and commercial world that informs people's knowledge of the world. So maybe there's a little bit of hope there.
Yeah.
Coming to the creatives.
I think it's unfortunate that we had to have to go through a pandemic in order for those things to be brought to light. I think it's good that we're talking about all of those things. I just hope we stick with it and we're actually put some work behind it, and that this time next year it's not just an afterthought, because we can't go back. We can't.
All I'll say is,
yeah, that is the health crisis.
Yeah.
That to go back to, I've been seeing people say, hey, 5-day work weeks, that's done. I'm not doing that again. I'm down. I actually decided yesterday, I said, I'm going to switch to 4 and just take a Thursday off and then come back, hit it hard on Friday and go back to the weekend. And I would have never come up with that, because I realized how things were going. I need a day within the work week after Monday through Wednesday. I'm getting all the emails and the requests and the asks, and I'm like, by Thursday, I need to sit with those. I need to chill. I need to get into it and like be like, what did someone ask for? So I'm not just doing it so quickly, and I'm just going with the process that is based on what, it should be based off of me. If someone wants to work with me, it should be based off of me. So those are questions that we're even asking ourselves now. Like, how many days a week do you want to work? How important is it to just actually go into a space to work? Like, how many days does school need to happen, or should we have a different type of school system? Like, it's really interesting right now because we're asking all these questions based on the topic of health.
Yeah, I think it has to be quality over quantity, always. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of a North American thing. I mean, I'm from the States, and it's a very, work hard environment. But I don't think it's so much about how many hours you put in. I mean, because half of that time can be wasted. I think it's about the quality of what you're doing with it and what you're learning and what you're getting out of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the French have figured this out. They have very high productivity for all their holidays and government entitlements, and Americans have their productivity isn't as high, and they work like ridiculous hours with no safety nets or sick days or maternity leaves and all of these fundamental human things.
It's true.
It's really insane, y'all.
Bonkers.
When I went on world tour, I'll be honest, we're talking about health. When I went on first of all, I'll just let you know what I've done as an artist, what I've done in the last few years to just add some years onto my life. I decided to leave New York. I didn't want to go to LA because I thought I would also just still be a workaholic. I decided to come to Miami, not to retire, but because of the rich history of electronic-based music, and that they had the industry of clubs and 24-hour things. And I was just like, I think I could figure it out there. It's been great since I've been here. But then once I was here, I was like, okay, cool, I can tour the world. But last year I decided I'm going to figure out a way to not be in this country all year long. I think that would be better for my health, because really looking at it, Black women are the most oppressed people on this planet. Just in general, we're just at the bottom of the totem pole, and I'm an artist on top of that. And so I'm just like, how can I add years onto my life? Because I really feel like I'm being placed in a ticking time bomb. I'm also an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not following anybody's rules. So I just tried to add years onto my life, and I'm like, not being in this country is, like, I think one of the things for artists. I think we should all be able to get away. And then, I started working in Africa, in East Africa, and just being actually in Africa and being from the African diaspora. I'm like, that's very important. And that's just a whole nother conversation about there's African approaches to health that are really awesome, and that I started to implement into my life, and just a way of being. Hakuna Matata, it means no worries. That's a real thing. That's Swahili. That's Swahili for no worries. And so it's just like, every country has like a custom of ease that we have yet to develop in the United States because we're so young, they say. But I don't even think it's that. I think it boils down to like identity and like how we want to persevere into the future. And I really feel like we're at the point where we need to start to make decisions collectively for that.
Yeah, and Suzi, your perspective on taking a more positive outlook on now is the time to push through change, not for the certain negativity to get bogged down. And I know it's only going to get worse in the US with the elections coming up, but I think, outside countries looking in, like Germany, for example, I think are taking away some very positive things that can be done. And, certainly you and others are leading the charge on a lot of that. I know we're sort of a little bit over time here, but a couple things we definitely know. I think we need to have a much longer session here, given everyone's experience and insights. Also, it appears that there will be a lot of ukulele collaborations happening in the electronic music scene.
I actually like that instrument. It sounds very nice when you play it.
Wanted to thank you guys all for joining this conversation. It's been super valuable and super inspiring to a number of people. Miro dropped out, but now he's back in. Just going around the horn here and thanking you guys. And I know we'll be pushing out through whatever channels we have the projects that you guys are up to, from mentorships to cultural organizations and otherwise. But thanks again for joining. Super exciting AV performance coming up from Van East, aka Pursuit Grooves. Much love, everyone. Have a great weekend. looking forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thanks.
Peace.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hello, hello.
Howdy.
Oh my gosh, this is life in Montreal right now. I'm like a mess of sweat. Shout out to Montreal Heatwave 2020. Welcome, Venice, aka Pursuit Grooves. Switching it up a little bit here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we're gonna change the vibe from panel chats on the collective health of our music community and just have a quick second to touch in about the AV set that you've curated specifically for this show, which is amazing. We thank you very much for that. It's quite time consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to give us a little bit of a nugget here? Because I don't know if everyone knows how diverse of a creator you are with your film school experience and beyond. Maybe give us a little bit of a look into what we have coming up.
Well, I have a tendency to enjoy challenging myself, which usually means that if there is a new event or festival or show coming up, I really like to work on new material from the music perspective and from the visual perspective. I am a video artist, and I really like to merge the music with the visual, and as much control as I have over all of those things, the better.
Right.
So I took this as an opportunity to work on all new music and to work on all new visuals and original footage. And I'm really, really excited. And something also awesome that comes out of things like this is that usually if I work on enough new material, I have enough for a new album. Right. And that's pretty much what this inspired. So I'm excited about that too. And yeah, I usually just let my brain do whatever comes to it. So I might have a bit of an idea of a mood, and I'll be inspired by a few things, and then I don't know, the wizards in my brain just start running, and I have to just go with it. And usually the outcome is pretty good. So it's been working for me all this time. So I'm not about to change anything. But yeah, I really like to push myself creatively, and even if it's if it's material that people aren't familiar with or they don't know, I have a tendency not to keep redoing the same shows or music. And yeah, it's just a good time for me to be creative.
Sweet. And I mean, with your production, you tend to grab from a lot of different places. I know you use your voice a lot. I know you're sampling all over the place. And, just because I've had a little bit of a hint of what's to come, I think we were in the snails world. Do you care to touch in on the snails?
Yeah.
The source of inspiration?
Well, like there are a couple things that I love, besides music, visual art, film. I'm really into healthy eating, healthy food, and I also love animals and environmental things. So they tend to collide and connect in a lot of different ways. And some years ago, when I first moved to Canada, I lived in the suburbs, and I spent a lot of time outside, and that led to filming some very creative animals. And much like I approach music production, I always like to build libraries of source material that even if I'm not using at that time, I know that I can always go back and look into and see what ways I can use it. And that way music and video and visuals are very similar to me in approach. So I had reached into some archives and looked into some footage and tried to reinterpret some things and worked on some different effects and just reimagine the story that I was trying to tell in this moment, which is connected with health and sustainability and self-care, which is really important right now, not just in the music industry, but life itself. As you see, like self-care is really important. So whenever I have the ability to put those messages in my creative work, I do.
Amazing. And yeah, I might use that to cue in your music, because I know we've had a pretty lengthy and powerful chat. So this will give people an opportunity to, like I said before, just kind of let those concepts that live up here move into our body. And the queen of moving us into our body is Pursuit Grooves, I would say, with ample bias. So thank you so much, Venice. Before we head into your set, I just want to give a shout out to our growing community of partners who are helping us fund this show. Big shout out to SUBPAC, DubLab, SonarWorks, Lander, VibeLab, Audius, Music Motion, and Bushido Studios. And of course, to all of you, our online audience, we appreciate your support. We appreciate you showing up, and we appreciate the donations that you send in to us. I mean, there's no cover for these shows. So if you're liking what you see, even the cup of coffee type vibe really helps us to produce more shows and get these conversations going. So big thank you. And yeah, I think let's move into this this amazing set. For those of you at home with SUBPACs, I mean, we can't play our speakers all the time the way we like to, but this is a really, if I know Venice's work, we're in the land of bass. So
I'm very bass heavy.
Yeah, that's it. But whatever way you can listen to it, I'm sure it's going to be an amazing experience. So thank you very much, Pursuit Grooves. Thank you all. You are listening or tuned into Immerse Digital, brought to you by StudioFeed. Stay tuned for Pursuit Grooves.
Honey, you are exhausting yourself trying to be something you're not. Yeah, that's what you're doing every single day. It's like you're trying to talk one way, look one way, dress one way, be one way. For what? You can simply be you, and that is enough. Who are you trying to prove something to? They don't matter. Only you matter. Your freedom is being who you are. You'll never get tired of just being you, because that's who you are. It's like breathing. It comes natural. But trying to be somebody else will wear you out. Use your life experience, okay? And let it help make room for you. Those are our gifts. Our gifts are simply living our life every day. It's not just, oh, this is my life. It's, oh, this is my life. What is it that I'm supposed to learn from this? And honey, I'm telling you, your life might just blow your mind one day. order to search in the depths of our soul to get through our day. Do not forget to recharge. Sometimes you have to disconnect. Sometimes you're going to have to step away so that you can come back strong to fulfill the thing you're trying to do. But it is important, okay? Are you hearing me? It is important to recharge. Check in on yourself, your mind, your body, and your soul. Honey, because if you ain't the best version of you, you ain't no good to nobody else. up on yourself. You can do it. Okay? All right. Very good. The course is called Life. Does that make sense to you? Don't think your life has no meaning. Every single thing you do has purpose. Okay? When you look back over that thing, honey, that thing line up like a perfect puzzle.
listening to Immerse Digital, brought to you by StudioFeed. Shout out to our collaborating partners SUBPAC, SonarWorks, and DubLab, and to our community of partners Bushido, Blender, Music Motion, VibeLab, and Audius, and of course to all of you for your continued support. Check us out at projectimmerse.org.